Marcus Chun wiped the sweat from his forehead as he pushed the heavy cleaning cart down the empty corridor of the Meridian Research Facility. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows that danced across the polished floor. It was past midnight, and the building felt like a tomb. He preferred it this way. The silence gave him time to think about his daughter Sarah, sleeping safely at home with Mrs. Rodriguez from next door. The facility paid well for night shift cleaning, better than any other job he could find with just a high school diploma. Every dollar mattered now that he was raising Sarah alone. Her mother had left when Sarah was 3, unable to handle the responsibility. Marcus never blamed her, not really. Being a parent was hard enough with 2 people. Doing it alone felt impossible in most days. He turned the corner into Section D, the restricted research wing. His security badge granted him access to clean, but he never looked too closely at the equipment or documents. The scientists were working on something big, he knew that much. Government contracts, military funding, whispered conversations about breakthrough discoveries. Marcus kept his head down and did his job. Clean the floors, empty the trash, replace the air filters, and go home to his daughter. The first sign something was wrong came from room D7. The door stood slightly open, which never happened. The researchers were obsessive about security protocols. Marcus approached carefully, his rubber-soled shoes silent on the floor. Through the gap, he could see shattered glass and overturned equipment. Emergency lights blinked red, casting everything in an ominous glow. He pushed the door open wider and stepped inside. The room looked like a war zone. Computers lay destroyed, their screens cracked and dark. Papers scattered everywhere, some singed at the edges. In the center of the chaos stood a large cylindrical tank, its glass front completely shattered. Whatever had been inside was gone. Marcus pulled out his radio to call security, but a sound from the corner made him freeze. It was soft, almost like whimpering. He turned slowly, his heart hammering in his chest. Behind an overturned desk, something moved in the shadows. It was small, roughly the size of a child, but clearly not human. The creature had pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the emergency lighting. Its large eyes dominated a delicate face, and thin limbs ended in hands with too many fingers. It was injured, dark fluid seeping from wounds on its arm and leg. When it saw Marcus, it tried to scramble away but collapsed with a cry of pain. Every instinct told Marcus to run, to call for help, to let someone else handle this situation. But as he looked at the creature huddled in the corner, all he could see was vulnerability. It was hurt and afraid, just like Sarah had been during her worst nightmares. The parental protective instinct that had carried him through 3 years of single fatherhood kicked in. He knelt down slowly, keeping his movements gentle and non-threatening. The creature watched him with those enormous eyes, its breathing rapid and shallow. Marcus could see intelligence there, and something else. Recognition. It understood that he was not like the others who had kept it in the tank. "Hey there," Marcus said softly, using the same tone he used when Sarah woke up from bad dreams. "I'm not going to hurt you. My name is Marcus." The creature tilted its head, processing his words. Then, impossibly, it spoke. Its voice was musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. But the words were clear. "You are different. Not the ones who took me from my home." Marcus felt his world shift. This was not just some animal or experiment. This was a person, someone with thoughts and feelings who had been imprisoned and studied. The implications hit him like a physical blow. The government facility, the secrecy, the military funding. They had captured a sentient being. "What's your name?" Marcus asked, sitting down cross-legged to appear less threatening. "I am Zeph of the Silver Current," the creature replied, its voice growing stronger. "I was traveling the space between stars when your people captured my vessel. They have kept me in that prison for many cycles of your sun." Marcus glanced at the shattered tank. "How did you get out?" Zeph's large eyes narrowed slightly. "Your people underestimated my abilities. I can manipulate electromagnetic fields, but they did not know this. Tonight, I gathered enough strength to overload their containment systems." The sound of distant alarms began echoing through the building. Security would be here soon, along with the scientists and probably military personnel. Marcus had maybe 5 minutes before they locked down the entire facility. He made a decision that would change everything. "Can you walk?" he asked urgently. Zeph struggled to stand, favoring the injured leg. I can manage short distances, but I am weak from captivity. Marcus looked around the destroyed lab and made calculations based on 3 years of learning every inch of this building during his cleaning rounds. He knew where the security cameras were, which corridors had blind spots, and, most importantly, he knew about the old maintenance tunnel that connected to the heating system. It was narrow and uncomfortable, but it led to an external access point that was rarely monitored. "I'm going to help you get out of here," Marcus said, surprising himself with his certainty. "But you have to trust me." Zeph studied his face for a long moment. "Why would you help me? Your people have treated me as a specimen to be studied." Marcus thought about Sarah, about all the times he had felt helpless to protect her from a world that seemed stacked against single parents. He thought about doing the right thing even when it was hard, about being the kind of person he wanted his daughter to grow up to be. "Because everyone deserves to be free," he said simply. "And because you're hurt and scared, and I can't just walk away from that." The alarms grew louder, and Marcus could hear heavy footsteps approaching. He helped Zeph to stand, supporting the alien's slight weight. They moved together toward a ventilation grate that Marcus had cleaned countless times, but never really noticed. With his maintenance tools, he quickly removed the covering. "It's going to be a tight fit," Marcus warned as he helped Zeph into the ductwork. "Stay quiet and follow me. I know a way out." As they crawled through the narrow tunnel, Marcus wondered what he had gotten himself into. He was risking everything: his job, his freedom, maybe even his life. But as he listened to Zeph's labored breathing behind him, he knew he could not have made any other choice. The tunnel stretched ahead into darkness, leading them away from the chaos of the lab and toward an uncertain future. Behind them, the sounds of the search grew fainter. Marcus had committed himself to a path that would test everything he believed about courage, sacrifice, and what it meant to be human. In the distance, through the building's walls, he could see the first light of dawn beginning to creep across the horizon. Sarah would be waking up soon, wondering where her father was. Mrs. Rodriguez would assume he was just running late from work again. Neither of them could imagine that Marcus was crawling through ventilation shafts with an alien refugee, about to become a fugitive from the very government he had always trusted to do the right thing. But as they emerged from the tunnel into the cool morning air, Marcus felt something he had not experienced in years: purpose. For the first time since becoming a single father, he was not just surviving each day. He was actively choosing to make the world a better place, even if only for one frightened being who deserved the chance to go home. Zeph collapsed as soon as they were outside. The effort of escape. Marcus drove through the empty streets as dawn painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Zeph lay unconscious in the passenger seat, wrapped in an old blanket Marcus kept in his truck. The alien's breathing was shallow but steady, and the dark fluid had stopped seeping from the wounds. Marcus tried to convince himself that was a good sign. His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Rodriguez. "Sarah is asking for you. Everything okay?" Marcus typed back with one hand while steering with the other. "Work ran late. Be there in 20 minutes. The lie came easily, though his stomach churned with guilt. Sarah was his world, and now he was dragging her into something dangerous. He pulled into the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The building had been empty for years, and Marcus had discovered it during one of his long drives when he needed to think. It was isolated, forgotten, and perfect for hiding someone who was not supposed to exist. Carrying Zeph inside was harder than expected. The alien was light, probably weighing less than Sarah, but completely limp. Marcus laid Zeph on some old cardboard he found, then went back to his truck for the first aid kit he always kept in the glove compartment. As he cleaned the wounds with antiseptic, Zeph's eyes fluttered open. The large, luminous orbs focused on Marcus with what might have been gratitude. "You saved me," Zeph said, voice barely above a whisper. "We're not safe yet," Marcus replied, applying bandages to the injuries. "The government will be looking for both of us now. I need to get my daughter and figure out our next move." Zeph struggled to sit up. "Daughter? You have offspring." Marcus pulled out his wallet and showed Zeph a photo of Sarah grinning at her last birthday party, chocolate cake smeared on her cheeks. "Sarah, she's 6. She's everything to me." Zeph studied the picture with fascination. "Among my people, Younglings are considered sacred. To care for them alone is the highest honor. The alien paused, seeming to gather strength. I cannot allow my rescue to endanger your offspring. You don't have a choice, Marcus said firmly. They'll tear apart my entire life looking for you. The only way forward is together. He left Zeph with water and some energy bars from his truck, promising to return within a few hours. The drive to Mrs. Rodriguez's house felt like the longest 20 minutes of his life. Every police siren made his heart race. Every helicopter in the distance could be searching for them. Sarah ran to him the moment he walked through the door, her small arms wrapping around his legs. Daddy, you were gone forever. I'm sorry, sweetheart, Marcus said, lifting her up and holding her tight. Work was very busy last night. Mrs. Rodriguez, a grandmother in her 70s who had become like family, studied Marcus's face with concern. You look terrible, Mijo. Are you feeling okay? Just tired, Marcus lied again. Actually, I was thinking Sarah and I should take a little vacation. Maybe drive up to see the mountains. Sarah squealed with delight, but Mrs. Rodriguez frowned. Very sudden, no? You just took time off last month when she had the flu. Marcus had to think fast. Work is giving me some unexpected time off. Budget cuts. Thought we should make the most of it. It was not entirely untrue. After today, he definitely would not have his job anymore. Back at their small apartment, Marcus packed quickly while Sarah gathered her favorite toys. He tried to think like a fugitive, taking only cash from his emergency fund and leaving his credit cards behind. His hands shook as he threw clothes into 2 duffel bags. Sarah sat on the bed, watching him with curious eyes. Are we really going to see mountains, Daddy? Marcus knelt down to her level. We're going on an adventure, sweetheart. But it might be different from our usual trips. We might meet some new friends. What kind of friends? How do you explain aliens to a 6-year-old? Very special friends. Different from anyone we've met before. But I need you to promise me something, okay? Whatever we see, whatever happens, you have to trust Daddy and do exactly what I say. Can you promise me that? Sarah nodded seriously. I promise, Daddy. Are we in trouble? The question hit him like a punch to the chest. No, baby girl. We're going to help someone who needs our help. Sometimes doing the right thing looks like trouble, but it's not really. They loaded the truck and drove back toward the warehouse. Sarah chatted excitedly about mountains and adventures, blissfully unaware that their normal life was over. Marcus listened to her voice and tried to memorize every word, afraid that whatever came next might take away these simple moments of joy. At the warehouse, Sarah stayed in the truck while Marcus went inside to check on Zeph. The alien had managed to sit up and was examining the bandages with obvious intelligence. Your medical knowledge is primitive but effective, Zeph observed. These wounds would have festered without treatment. I learned basic first aid when Sarah was born, Marcus explained. Single parents have to be prepared for everything. He paused, gathering courage for what came next. I brought her with me. We can't go back to our normal lives. Zeph's expression grew troubled. This is not what I intended. Your offspring should not suffer for my freedom. She won't suffer if we're smart about this, Marcus said. But I need to know more about you. About your people. If we're going to run, I need to understand what we're running toward. Zeph was quiet for a long moment, those large eyes distant with memory. My people are called the Veilthian. We are explorers, scientists, artists. We travel between stars not to conquer, but to learn, to share knowledge and beauty with other civilizations. How long have your people known about humans? Generations. We have been watching, studying your culture from a distance. Most of us believed your species was too primitive, too violent for contact. I disagreed. Zeph's voice grew sad. I came here alone to prove that humans could be more than warriors and destroyers. Instead, your government proved my people right. Marcus felt a surge of anger at the thought of Zeph being treated like a lab specimen. Not all humans are like the ones who captured you. I am learning this, Zeph said, gesturing to the bandages and then toward the truck where Sarah waited. You risk everything for a being you barely know. This is not the behavior my people expected from your species. The sound of Sarah calling for him interrupted their conversation. Marcus went outside to find her pointing at the sky with excitement. Daddy, look at all the helicopters. Marcus's blood ran cold. 3 military helicopters circled in the distance, moving in a search pattern. They were closing in on the area, probably tracking his truck through traffic cameras or cell phone signals. We have to go, he told Zeph urgently. Now. Zeph struggled to stand, still weak from the escape and injuries. I will slow you down. Leave me here, and take your offspring to safety. Not happening, Marcus said, helping Zeph toward the truck. We stick together. Sarah watched with wide eyes as Marcus helped the blanket-wrapped figure into the back seat. Daddy, who is that? This is Zeph, Marcus said, starting the engine. The special friend I told you about. Zeph pulled back the blanket slightly, revealing that pale blue face and those enormous eyes. Sarah stared for a moment, then smiled with the easy acceptance that only children possess. Hi, Zeph. Are you okay? You look hurt. I am healing, young one, Zeph replied, voice gentle. Your father is helping me get better. Daddy's really good at fixing things, Sarah said proudly. He fixed my bicycle and my dollhouse and even the washing machine. Despite everything, Marcus smiled. Sarah, we're going to play a game, okay? We're going to see how far we can drive without stopping. Can you help me watch for any cars that might be following us? Sarah nodded enthusiastically, turning to peer out the rear window. Marcus drove carefully through back roads, avoiding the highways where they would be easier to spot. The helicopters grew fainter in the distance, but he knew it was only a temporary reprieve. As they drove through farmland and small towns, Zeph began to explain more about Valethian technology and culture. They were peaceful people, advanced in sciences that humans could barely comprehend, but they had strict laws about interfering with developing civilizations. If I can contact my people, Zeph said, they will come for me. But they will also see how your government has treated me. It could affect relations between our species for centuries. What would happen if they decided humans were too dangerous? Zeph was quiet for a moment. Isolation. Your world would be quarantined. No contact, no sharing of knowledge or technology. Your species would develop alone, or not at all. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He was not just rescuing one alien. He was potentially determining the future relationship between two civilizations. And he was doing it while trying to protect his 6-year-old daughter. They stopped for gas in a small town, Marcus paying cash and keeping his head down. While Zeph waited in the truck with Sarah, who had fallen asleep against the alien's shoulder, Marcus bought supplies and tried to think through their options. His phone buzzed with missed calls from unknown numbers, probably 3 days into their flight. Marcus felt the walls closing in. They had been moving constantly, sleeping in abandoned buildings and staying off main roads, but their resources were running low. Sarah was asking fewer questions about their adventure and more about when they could go home. Zeph's wounds were healing remarkably fast, but the alien was growing weaker from lack of proper nutrition. They were hiding in an old barn outside a farming community when everything changed. Marcus had gone into town for supplies, leaving Sarah and Zeph together in what had become their routine. The two had formed an unlikely friendship, with Sarah teaching Zeph children's games while the alien shared stories of distant worlds and creatures that sparked her imagination. When Marcus returned with food and new batteries for their flashlight, he found them sitting together, but something was different. Zeph's skin was glowing with a faint blue radiance, and Sarah was staring at her hands in wonder. "Daddy, look," Sarah exclaimed. "Zeph taught me something amazing." Marcus watched in shock as tiny sparks of electricity danced between his daughter's fingers. The sparks were weak, barely visible, but they were definitely there. Sarah was generating electricity with her bare hands. "What did you do?" Marcus asked Zeph, trying to keep his voice calm for Sarah's sake. "I sense potential in her neural pathways," Zeph explained. "Humans have latent electromagnetic abilities, but they are usually dormant. Your offspring's mind is still developing, more adaptable. I merely showed her how to access what was already there." Marcus knelt down to Sarah's level. "How do you feel, sweetheart?" "It tingles, but it doesn't hurt," Sarah said, making the sparks dance again. "Zeph says some people on their world can do this with their thoughts. Can I show Mrs. Rodriguez when we get home?" "Let's keep this our secret for now," Marcus said carefully. His daughter had just developed what could only be called superpowers, and he had no idea what that meant for her future. That night, while Sarah slept between them, Zeph explained more about human potential. "Your species is young but remarkable. the alien whispered in the darkness. You have abilities that could develop into something extraordinary given time and knowledge. But your governments fear change, fear what they cannot control. Is that why they captured you? Partly. My people have technology that could advance your civilization by centuries. Clean energy, medical advances, space travel. But we also represent proof that humans are not alone in the universe, and that knowledge would destabilize many of your social structures. Marcus thought about the implications. So they keep you secret and study you, hoping to gain advantages without sharing the knowledge. Exactly. And now your daughter has been exposed to abilities your species is not supposed to possess for many more generations. The next morning brought new dangers. As they prepared to leave the barn, Marcus spotted vehicles approaching along the dirt road. Black SUVs with government plates, moving in a coordinated search pattern. Somehow, they had been tracked despite all his precautions. They found us, Marcus said urgently. We need to go now. But, as they moved toward the back exit, more vehicles appeared, surrounding the barn. They were trapped. Agent Victoria Hayes stepped out of the lead vehicle, her voice amplified by a megaphone. Marcus Chun, this is the Department of Homeland Security. You are harboring stolen government property. Surrender the alien, and your daughter will not be harmed. Marcus felt rage building in his chest. They were calling Zeph property, reducing a sentient being to the level of an object. And threatening Sarah made it personal. Property, Marcus called back. Zeph is a person, not a thing you can own. The alien is a classified asset vital to national security, Hayes replied. You have 30 seconds to surrender, or we will take more direct action. Sarah pressed close to Marcus's side, frightened by the harsh voices and threatening vehicles. Zeph stood quietly, but Marcus could see the alien's mind working, processing options. I will surrender, Zeph said softly. Your offspring should not suffer for my freedom. No, Marcus said firmly. We stick together. That was the deal. Zeph looked at him with something approaching admiration. Even now, facing your own government's weapons, you choose loyalty over safety. This is why I believed in your species. The 30 seconds expired, and Marcus heard the sound of weapons being readied. He pulled Sarah closer, his mind racing through impossible odds. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped in an open field with nowhere to run. That was when Zeph's skin began to glow brighter. Your electromagnetic technology operates on principles my people mastered long ago, the alien said, standing straighter despite the injuries. Perhaps it is time for a demonstration. The first government vehicle died suddenly, its engine cutting out completely. Then, the second, then, the third. Within moments, every piece of electronic equipment in the area had stopped functioning. Radios went silent, weapons jammed, and even the agent's watches stopped ticking. In the sudden quiet, Zeph walked toward the disabled vehicles. Agent Hayes and her team tried to follow, but their equipment refused to function. Marcus grabbed Sarah's hand, and they followed Zeph, moving through the circle of frustrated agents like they were walking through a museum display. How did you do that? Sarah whispered in amazement. Electromagnetic pulse, Zeph explained simply. I disrupted the electrical systems in all their devices. They are harmless now. Agent Hayes tried to block their path, but Zeph simply looked at her with those large, luminous eyes. Your government has committed an act of war against my people by imprisoning me without cause. When my ship arrives, there will be consequences for this aggression. Your ship? Hayes asked, her professional composure cracking. Did you think I came to your world alone? Zeph asked with what might have been amusement. I have been sending distress signals since my capture. My people are already in your solar system. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. Alien ships were coming to Earth, and it was partly his fault for helping Zeph escape. The implications for humanity were staggering. They walked to Marcus's truck, which had been far enough away to avoid the electromagnetic pulse. As they drove away from the disabled government agents, Sarah peppered Zeph with questions about the incoming ship. Are there lots of your people coming? She asked excitedly. A research vessel with approximately 50 crew members, Zeph replied. They are scientists and explorers, not warriors. But they are also very protective of their own. Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter. What will happen when they arrive? That depends largely on how I report my treatment by humans, Zeph said carefully. If I tell them about the imprisonment and experimentation, they will likely recommend that Earth be quarantined indefinitely. But you escaped, Marcus pointed out. I helped you. That has to count for something. It counts for everything, Zeph agreed. One human janitor and his offspring have shown more compassion and courage than your entire government. This is significant data. They drove for hours, staying ahead of the pursuit that would surely follow once the government agents got their equipment working again. Marcus's mind was spinning with the enormity of what was happening. First contact between humans and aliens was about to occur, and somehow he had become a central figure in determining how it would go. As the sun began to set, Zeph directed them to a large open field surrounded by forest. This is where my people will land, the alien explained. We should arrive first and establish a safe meeting ground. Marcus parked the truck and helped set up their camp one more time. Sarah, exhausted from the day's excitement, fell asleep quickly in the back seat. Marcus and Zeph sat by a small fire, looking up at the stars. Are you nervous about seeing your people again? Marcus asked. Yes, Zeph admitted. I have changed during my captivity. Learning about humans, especially about you and your offspring, has altered my perspective. I came to your world believing humans were too primitive for contact. Now I wonder if we Veilthians have become too isolated, too cautious. What do you mean? Your species has something mine has lost, Zeph explained. You call it courage, but it is more than that. It is the willingness to risk everything for what is right, even when the odds are impossible. I have watched you sacrifice your entire life to help a stranger. This is not primitive behavior. It is highly evolved morality. Marcus poked at the fire with a stick, thinking about the last few days. I was terrified the whole time. That's not courage. Courage is not the absence of fear, Zeph said. It is acting correctly despite fear. You have demonstrated this repeatedly. A shooting star streaked across the sky, but, as they watched, it slowed and changed direction. Not a meteor, but a spacecraft beginning its approach to Earth. They're coming, Zeph said softly. The Veilthian ship rose from the field like a living thing, its bioorganic hull shifting between states of matter that defied human understanding. Marcus had expected something metallic and mechanical, but this vessel seemed grown rather than built, its surface rippling with patterns of light that suggested thoughts moving through neural networks. Three beings emerged from the opening that had appeared in the ship's side. They were taller than Zeph, their movements more graceful, and their skin held a deeper blue luminescence. But their eyes held the same intelligence and depth that Marcus had come to recognize in his alien friend. The center figure stepped forward, and Marcus felt a tingling in his mind as it spoke without moving its mouth. The words formed directly in his consciousness, bypassing his ears entirely. I am Commander Vale Sereth of the research vessel Luminous Current. We have come for our lost explorer. The mental voice was formal, carrying undertones of authority and barely restrained anger. Zeph moved forward, still leaning slightly on Marcus for support. Commander, I am grateful for your rescue. But the circumstances of my return require explanation. Indeed they do, Commander Vale Sereth replied, the mental voice growing sharper. 60 cycles you have been missing. We detected the destruction of your scout vessel and the capture of your person. The ruling council debates whether this world should be isolated permanently for its aggression against our people. Marcus felt Sarah's hand tighten in his. She could not hear the mental conversation, but she could sense the tension in the air. The small sparks that danced around her fingers grew brighter, responding to her emotions. Zeph straightened, finding strength from somewhere deep within. Commander, before you make any judgments about this species, you must understand what has occurred during my captivity. The alien gestured toward Marcus and Sarah. These humans risked everything to secure my freedom. The male sacrificed his livelihood, his safety, and his future to help me escape. The young one has shown abilities that suggest this species has far greater potential than our initial assessments indicated. Commander Vale Sereth's attention focused on Sarah, and Marcus instinctively stepped protectively in front of his daughter. The commander's large eyes widened as the sparks around Sarah's hands became more visible. Impossible, the commander said, the mental voice filled with surprise. Electromagnetic manipulation in such a young specimen? This level of neural development should not exist in your species for several more evolutionary cycles. Zeph taught me, Sarah said proudly, apparently oblivious to the fact that the aliens were communicating telepathically. I can make lightning with my fingers. Wanna see? She held up her hands and generated a small but steady stream of electrical current that arced between her palms. The three Veilthians stepped back in apparent shock. This changes everything, Commander Veilsereth said, the mental voice now filled with wonder rather than anger. If human younglings can develop these abilities through simple exposure to our techniques, then your species is far more advanced than we believed. The second Veilthian, slightly smaller than the commander, stepped forward. I am Science Leader Kethmorian. What you have shown us contradicts decades of observation and analysis. We must study this phenomenon. Marcus felt his protective instincts flare. Nobody is studying my daughter. She's not a lab specimen. Of course not, Commander Veilsereth assured him quickly. We are not like your government scientists. But this discovery has profound implications for both our species. Zeph moved between them, serving as translator and mediator. Commander, during my captivity, I observed something remarkable about these humans. They possess what we might call moral courage. The male, Marcus, chose to help me despite enormous personal risk. He did this not for gain, but because it was the correct action. The commander studied Marcus with new interest. You are not a leader among your people? Not a scientist or military officer? I'm a janitor, Marcus said simply. I clean buildings for a living and raise my daughter alone. A janitor, the commander repeated, testing the unfamiliar concept. One who maintains order and cleanliness. This is considered low-status work among your people. By some, yeah. Fascinating. Among my people, those who maintain harmony and order are among our most respected citizens. The commander paused, processing this information. So one of your society's humble workers chose to defy your government to protect a being he had never met. That's right. The three aliens conferred among themselves in rapid, musical tones that bypassed human hearing entirely. Marcus caught fragments of concepts through their occasional lapses into telepathy, surprise, recalculation, debate about protocol, and precedent. Finally, Commander Veilsereth approached Marcus directly. Your actions have created what your people might call a diplomatic incident. My government sent me to retrieve Zeph and determine whether your species represents a threat to galactic peace. Marcus felt a chill. And, based on your government's treatment of our explorer, the recommendation would normally be complete isolation. Your world would be quarantined, your species left to develop without external contact. Sarah tugged on Marcus's shirt. Daddy, what are they talking about? Very important grown-up stuff, sweetheart, Marcus said softly. Just stay close to me. Science leader Kethmorian stepped forward. However, your actions and your offspring's demonstrated abilities suggest we may have misunderstood your species entirely. Perhaps it is not lack of development that makes humans aggressive, but fear of the unknown. We're not all aggressive, Marcus said. Most people just want to live peacefully and take care of their families. This is what Zeph has reported, Commander Veilsereth acknowledged. One human's compassion does not represent an entire species, but it suggests potential that our previous assessments missed. The aliens spent several more minutes in their musical conference before the commander approached again. We have reached a decision. We will take Zeph home for medical treatment and recovery. But we will also make a recommendation to the ruling council that contact protocols with your species be revised. What kind of revision? Marcus asked. Instead of isolation, we propose limited contact with carefully selected humans. Individuals who demonstrate the qualities your people call courage, compassion, and wisdom. The commander paused meaningfully. We propose that you and your offspring be among the first official ambassadors between our species. Marcus felt the world tilt around him. Me? I'm nobody special. I just did what anyone should do. Exactly, Zeph said, speaking aloud for Sarah's benefit. You acted according to your moral principles without regard for personal cost. This is extremely rare in any species, and it suggests that humans have the potential to become valuable members of the galactic community. Sarah looked up at Marcus with wide eyes. Are we going to be space ambassadors, Daddy? Before Marcus could answer, the sound of helicopters approached from the distance. The government forces had finally tracked them down, despite all their precautions. Commander Valeserith's expression hardened. Your authorities arrive. Their timing is unfortunate. What will you do? Marcus asked, pulling Sarah closer. That depends on their actions, the commander replied. If they approach peacefully, we will attempt communication. If they show aggression. The alien left the sentence unfinished, but Marcus understood the implication. The Valethians had technology far beyond anything humans possessed, and they would not hesitate to use it to protect themselves. Agent Hayes and her team descended from the helicopters in full tactical gear, weapons drawn but not aimed directly at the aliens. To her credit, Hayes seemed to understand that she was facing a first contact scenario that was far beyond her original mission parameters. This is Agent Victoria Hayes, Department of Homeland Security, she called out through a megaphone. We are here to retrieve stolen government property and arrest the fugitive Marcus Chun. Commander Valeserith stepped forward, and when the alien spoke, its voice somehow carried clearly across the field without technological amplification. Agent Hayes, I am Commander Valeserith of the Valethian Republic. The being you call property is a free citizen of our society, imprisoned without cause by your government. The human Marcus Chun is under our protection as one who aided in the rescue of our explorer. Hayes lowered her megaphone, apparently struggling to process the situation. You're really aliens. We are really sentient beings who came in peace and were met with violence, the commander replied. Your government's actions have created a crisis that could affect your species' future among the civilized worlds. Marcus watched the standoff develop with growing tension. Sarah pressed against his leg, overwhelmed by the helicopters, weapons, and alien technology surrounding them. Her small hands crackled with nervous energy, the sparks growing brighter and more chaotic. It's okay, sweetheart, Marcus whispered, kneeling down to hold her. Remember what Zeph taught you about controlling the energy. Think calm thoughts. Sarah nodded and closed her eyes, concentrating. The sparks gradually settled into a steady, gentle glow that seemed to fascinate everyone watching. Science leader Keth Morian observed Sarah's display with obvious excitement. Commander, the human youngling is demonstrating remarkable control for someone with no formal training. If this is representative of her species' potential. I know, the commander replied. It changes everything. Agent Hayes had been listening to the exchange with growing confusion. You can continue down the path of fear and aggression, remaining isolated among the stars. Or you can choose the path of cooperation and growth, joining the community of civilized worlds. And that decision rests with us? Partly. But it also rests with individuals like Marcus Chun, who prove that humans are capable of moral evolution. The commander gestured toward Marcus and Sarah. We propose to take these two as cultural ambassadors to our world, to show our people that humanity has the potential for wisdom and compassion. Hayes looked at Marcus with something approaching respect. You've really done it, haven't you? Changed first contact for our entire species. Marcus shook his head. I just helped someone who needed help. Anyone would have done the same. No, Hayes said quietly. Most people wouldn't have. That's what makes this so remarkable. As the sun set behind them, casting long shadows across the field where two species had met in circumstances none of them could have imagined, Marcus realized that his simple decision to help a frightened being had somehow become the foundation for humanity's future among the stars. And, looking at Sarah, her hands glowing with abilities that should not exist for centuries, he began to understand that their adventure was just beginning. Marcus woke Sarah gently. Sweetheart, our adventure is about to get even more interesting. As the alien ship descended toward their location, its hull glowing with the same blue radiance as Zeph's skin, Marcus wondered what would happen next. Would the Valethians see humans as potential allies or dangerous primitives? Would Sarah's new abilities be seen as a gift or a threat? Would their species learn to work together or remain forever separated by fear and mistrust? The ship touched down in the center of the field, silent as a whisper. Lights appeared along its surface, and an opening materialized where none had been before. Marcus took Sarah's hand on one side and helped Zeph stand on the other. Whatever happens, Marcus said as they walked toward the ship, we face it together. Sarah squeezed his hand tighter, her other hand crackling with the small sparks Zeph had taught her to control. "It's going to be okay, Daddy. Zeph's friends are going to like us." As they approached the alien vessel, Marcus hoped his daughter was right. The future of two civilizations might depend on the next few minutes. And somehow a human janitor and his 6-year-old daughter had become Earth's unofficial ambassadors to the stars, remnant agents trying to track him. There were also messages from Mrs. Rodriguez and his few friends, worried about his sudden disappearance. Marcus turned the phone off and removed the battery. From now on, they would be truly on their own. Back in the truck, he found Sarah showing Zeph her favorite book, a story about a little girl who befriended a dragon. Zeph was examining the illustrations with genuine interest, asking questions about human stories and imagination. "Your offspring has a beautiful mind," Zeph told Marcus. "She accepts difference without fear. This gives me hope for your species." As they drove deeper into the countryside, Marcus began to understand that their journey was about more than just escape. They were carrying the seeds of first contact between two civilizations, and somehow he had become responsible for nurturing that relationship. The scared alien in his truck was not just a refugee, but an ambassador, and Sarah's innocent acceptance might be the key to everything. The sun was setting when they found another abandoned building to shelter in for the night. As Marcus set up a makeshift camp with blankets and supplies, he watched Sarah share her snacks with Zeph and chatter about her favorite games. The alien listened with patient attention, occasionally offering insights into Vaelthian childhood that made Sarah giggle with delight. For the first time since the escape began, Marcus allowed himself to hope that they might actually have a chance. Not just to survive, but to prove that humans and Vaelthians could be friends. If a scared alien and a curious little girl could find common ground, maybe there was hope for their entire species. Avaying drained what little strength remained. Marcus knelt beside the alien, gently checking the wounds that still seeped that dark fluid. They needed medical attention, but human hospitals were out of the question. He would have to figure something else out. "Where do we go now?" Zeph asked weakly. Marcus looked at his watch. Sarah would be awake in an hour, and Mrs. Rodriguez would expect him to pick her up by 7. His normal life was calling, but nothing would ever be normal again. He had chosen to step into something larger than himself, and there was no going back. "First, we get you somewhere safe where I can treat those injuries," Marcus said, his mind already working through the logistics. "Then, we figure out how to get you home." As they made their way toward Marcus's old pickup truck, neither of them noticed the surveillance drone that had been tracking their escape from high above, its cameras recording everything for analysis by people who would not be pleased to discover that their most valuable specimen had disappeared with the help of a night shift janitor who was about to become the most wanted man in the country.